Hello, pre-algebra. Today we're going to be working with squares, cubes, and their roots. You've already had a lesson on squares, so really today our focus is going to be on cubes and cube roots. As far as the I can statements, I can evaluate perfect squares and cube roots, again with cubes as our emphasis, and I can recognize taking a perfect square root or cube root is the inverse of squaring and cubing. So basically today we want to make sure we know that cubes and cube roots are opposite of one another. What is the volume of this cube? So this is our real life application of this problem. The formula for volume is equal to length times width times height. So as I'm looking at this cube, it is a 5 by 5 by 5. So we have the length is 5. We have the width is 5. Remember to write down everything that I'm writing down on my PowerPoint. You're going to write that down on yours as well. And then also the height is 5. So if I go back and I substitute in to this equation, volume is equal to length times width times height. You may be thinking, you know what, there's a little bit easier way to do that. We can do volume, when we're talking about a cube, we can say volume is equal to s cubed. So in other words, that would just be 5 raised to the third power, or 5 times 5 times 5, which is equal to 125. And I put a label there as feet, so that's going to be feet cubed, or another way to say that would be cubic feet. So feet cubed, so when it's raised to the third power, we say cube, or we can say cubic feet. So then what is the side length? The side length is 5. So as far as kind of going back and forth between the two, let me just emphasize again that the volume of this cube is 125 cubic feet. You can imagine if you actually counted all of the cubes in this Rubik cube, then there would be 125 of those. That's what the question that we're answering. But the side length is just going to be 5. So the side length is 5, and so we'll say 5 feet. And you can also kind of look at it and see that that's 5 units across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So just take the cubed root of 125, and that's going to give you your side length. Find the cubed root. As far as our thought process is concerned, we're trying to find a number that I multiply by itself 3 times that's going to get to be 1,000. If you are using your calculator, you're going to punch in the number 3. You're going to punch in second. Then you're going to look for the key that looks like this, and it's actually where the caret key is. So you're going to punch in 3. You're going to hit the second key, which is at the very top left corner of your calculator, second. And then you're going to click this button, which is the same button as here. It's just a second function of it. And that's going to give you the cubed root of 1,000. Then we're going to go ahead and put in 1,000. And that's going to give me 10. So what that means is if the answer is 10, that 10 times 10 times 10 is equal to 1,000. So we know that 10 times 10 is 100. And then 100 times 10 is going to give me 1,000. So the cubed root of 1,000 is the answer 10. I'm just showing you how we're getting there. So when we're asking about a cubed root, we want to know what do I multiply by itself 3 times in order to get the cubed root of 1,000. On number 2, we want to know the cubed root of 8. So once again, if I'm doing this on my calculator, I'm going to go ahead first and put the negative down. Let's go ahead and just bring that down for the ride. We're going to push the number 3. Then we're going to do second. Then because it's the second function of the caret key, and that key looks like this, X. So it's on this. That's going to be the white. This is going to be your second function. So click that. And then in this case, 8. And I can see that the answer is 2. In other words, 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is going to be 8, and then we bring down the negative. So our final answer is negative 2. The negative cubed root of 8 is negative 2. Awesome. Moving on to number 3. Now we have a fraction. If we have a fraction, we're going to take the cubed root of 27. So I'm trying to find out, what do I multiply by itself 3 times to be 27? That's going to be 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27. So that's my numerator. The cubed root of 27 is 3. And then the cubed root, just a reminder in terms of how do you use your calculator again. Bring down this negative, it has to follow. And then the square root of the cubed root of 216, so you push the number 3 first. Then the second key, then the key that says x, like this, x. And it's basically saying I want to find the cubed root of that number, and it's on the caret key. And in this case, we're going to push 216. So what do I multiply by itself 3 times to get 216? That's going to be the number 6, because 6 times 6 times 6 is 216. Now I have negative 3 6. Is that simplified? Nope. I can divide that by 3. 3 is the greatest common factor of 3 and 6, so that will simplify down to negative 1/2. You also have your calculator. Once you have 3, if you do 3 ABC 6 and then hit enter, it'll simplify it down for you to 1/2. Don't forget the negative to follow. Now we're going to go the other way. We're going to do some cubes. So I just want to know 4 cubed, or 4 raised to the third power. That means 4 times 4 times 4. I know this is 16. 16 times 4 is 64. So 4 cubed, or 4 raised to the third power, is 64. Remember that the exponent applies to the base. Well, in the case of number 1, the base is the number 4. This is our base. In the case of number 2, do you see the parentheses? The parentheses then indicate the base. So this is like super glue. This all stays together. So the base is negative 5. So I want to raise that to the third power. It's negative 5 times negative 5 times negative 5. Well, a negative times a negative is a positive. And then I'm just going to bring down this negative 5. And a positive times a negative is going to be a negative. So I know that if the signs are the same when I'm multiplying, it's positive. But if I have different signs, like this is a positive, this is a negative, then I'll end up with negative 125. So the exponent applies to negative 5. The problem is negative 5 times negative 5 times negative 5. On number 3, now we're dealing with a fraction. The exponent applies to the base. So the magic question here is, am I raising negative 5/8 to the third power, or am I raising 5/8 to the third power? Well, I'm just going to raise 5/8 to the third power and bring down the negative. So 5/8 to the third, let's bring down the negative, and then 5/8 times 5/8 times 5/8. That's the number in question, where this negative is just going to hang out by itself. So we've got 25 times 5, which is 125, and then 8 to the third power is going to, that caret key that we talked about earlier, this is the caret key where you had the second function. Now we're just using the first function. This is the caret key. So you can do 8 raised to the third, and that's going to be 512. And that will not simplify. That would be in simplest form. So negative 125 over 512. If you're not sure if it's simplified, you do 125 ABC, 512, and it just leaves it exactly like that. So that's a good indication that you've done it right, because it just writes it as 125 512ths. I hope that you enjoyed your lesson on cubes and cube roots.